Hey guys, welcome to the Heart of David. I said in my last video that I was gonna play this. This is an excellent video. I'm sure I'll comment, but I just want to kind of sit back and rest. I don't feel well today. Why? Every time I have to get up early and go to an appointment, I don't feel well today. Usually happens. I don't know why. If I change my schedule just by a bit, man, I get sick. More tired equals more pain equals I just don't feel well. But this video, I saw this video the other day, and I don't know, I guess I've been watching. I'll say this very quickly before I go on about anything. If you know what, this is my best piece of information I can give an abuse, physical or emotional survivor that I can give. If you've seen all the videos, if you understand what these people do, they all deserve to be exposed, every single one of them. Christ is coming back. He will do it himself, though. Depends what they do to you, right? But I think one of the best keys to getting well is to know when to stop watching these videos. But they pop up on my thing anyways, and personally, I'm not in a space where I'm listening to it looking for information. I'm looking for, out of interest, out of psychological interest, to understand why these people do what they do. That's the point. So this particular video, well, you can see what it says there: what narcissists hope for when you go no contact. But this gives an overview of something I have never seen since I started watching these videos. I started watching these videos when someone completely betrayed me. Excuse me. They probably watch every single one of my videos. I'm quite aware of that. I'm quite aware that, everywhere my name is, where you can give you a message, and whether on YouTube, whether I'm selling something on my phone, I'm well aware that I take the risk of it's them. So I went through a crazy period of that, and I'm sure you know what that's like. This guy covers this like he's playing an arcade game. You have to see it. He covers all the bases very well. I mean right to the very end. So anyways, I'll comment when I feel I need to. I think it's so excellent. And when he gets to the end, when a narcissist realizes that you're not coming back, then they switch over to, you'll see it in the very end, because I hadn't seen anyone else ever do this. He did an excellent job. I would actually share this with people if you know someone who would enjoy this. Why on this channel? Because we live in a time with a lot of psychological and physical abuse. We live in a time where the internet is creating your personality, right? And I had to get off Facebook. I got off Facebook. I got rid of it. Except for, I do sell things. But I had to get rid of it because all I saw, all those things, Instagram, except for this channel. And, I have some other channels, but they're constructive channels. They absolutely, they grow people's pride. That's what they do. You know exactly what I mean. Without the internet, I think it'd be safe to say that narcissism would go down by probably within a number of years. I mean, this has already done its harm to people, right? But anyways, I think it would go down by at least 10%. I do. It's got to be 20% of the population, and whatever percent of that has NPD, I don't know. but there's very high rates of narcissism, high enough that it's affecting our society in horrible ways. And that's one reason I think Jesus Christ is coming back. Paul told us what it would be like, right? And it's here. So let's listen to this.
The number one thing that a narcissist hopes for when you go no contact is this intense desire to regain control. They're not letting you go easy. Check this out. This is a graphic that I slapped together that basically describes the standard narcissistic abuse cycle. I'm assuming if you're prowling YouTube for narcissist content, you've probably seen this graphic before. Basically, there are four main stages. You have the idealization stage, which is basically where the narcissist will shower you with affection. Then you go to the devaluation stage, where the narcissist basically devalues you through criticism, discard, they get rid of you. And then the hoovering stage. They suck the victim back in like a vacuum. Yep. This is probably nothing new to you. But one of the things that's always struck me as interesting about this cycle is that it's kind of predicated all on this concept of control. I mean, think about how each of these four phases really operates. With idealization, it's the narcissist that is showering you with affection. With devaluation, the narcissist is the agent devaluing you. With discarding, well, the narcissist is discarding you. With hoovering, the narcissist is sucking you back in. They're the ones who actively choose that the cycle moves forward. So here's my question.
Think of how predatory and evil that is. And you wonder, they make you have a soul tie with them. Whether you have sexual relations, whether you have some other type of tie together, they do this on purpose. So the whole time they knew what they were doing. That's why you got to stop watching these videos. That's why you got to go no contact, because it's evil.
How does something like a no contact rule impact this cycle? Well, for the first time ever, you're taking control out of their hands. And this will drive a narcissist crazy, because really the narcissistic abuse cycle hinges on two things. Them being in control and having sometimes a willing participant. By going no contact, you not only take control away from them, but you show them that you are an unwilling participant. But don't expect it to go smoothly. Look at this. This is an article I stumbled across written by Diane Grande. And she makes some really interesting assertions about how going into a no contact rule will impact a narcissist. For example, a narcissist is likely to experience narcissistic collapse, work to regain their narcissistic supply, feel bored, anxious, depressed, deny that the relationship has changed, feel challenged to get you back, feel an intense anger. Here's my point. All the stuff that Diane pointed out in that article are strong indicators that a narcissist is not just going to let you go no contact and get away with it. No, they're likely going to methodically go through a process and do 5 specific things to try to get you to break the no contact rule so they can get you back under their control. But it's really the last thing that they do here that ends up fooling most people and getting them caught in that narcissistic.
You made it like a board game.
Let's start at the beginning though, with love bombing. All right, so here's a question. When you look at the narcissistic abuse cycle, at what stage do you think most people attempt a no contact rule? Well, that would likely be right about here, right after they're discarded. Now, it's been my experience, and I have a lot of experience with the no contact rule, that it's usually not done from a place of happiness, but a place of deep despair or anger. Which brings up an interesting quandary. Look what's right around the corner for a narcissist. The Hoover stage, where something like love bombing would naturally take place. So in this instance where you have a person using a no contact rule on a narcissist, likely right after the discard stage, and really quite frankly attention to the actions of the victim. Well, honestly, it's going to depend on the narcissist's level of self-absorption and attention to the victim's actions at this stage. If a narcissist has already shifted their focus to a new target for their narcissistic supply, they probably are not going to immediately notice the absence of contact. However, let's say that their new source of supply isn't enough, or they can't find one. well, that's when they're going to turn back to you, the previous source of supply. It's just you're not responding. Now, and it's now that they recognize the fact that you are ignoring them, but they're not panicking yet. They decide to enter the hoovering phase earlier than they had planned. And this is where you start seeing the love bombing come out. They'll shower you with excessive compliments and promises of change.
So, can you imagine, like, you start off you start off the relationship, right? And you feel euphoric because they're saying all these nice things to you for however long it lasts. And whatever, it doesn't matter if they discarded you or you discarded them. In any case, they're most likely going to come back and hoover you again. Can you imagine after all the stuff that they do to you, all the gaslighting, all the lying, which is gaslighting, whatever they did, they think they can come back and get you by doing that same thing. You know, when you think of like things like murder and, you know, the most horrific things like murder and rape and all those types of things, those things obviously are quite bad. There's just something to this. Something for someone to try to mess with your psyche. And it's all about them. It's all about their pride. They're the very opposite of Jesus Christ. The very opposite. They're operating under Satan.
Change. They'll reminisce about the good times you shared. After all, this has worked for them before, and so many sources of their so-called supply fall for it and then get trapped back into their cycle. I want to do something unique here. Let's pull up the graphic that I made of the 5 most common strategies that narcissists will use on you during no contact. Now, we've obviously covered love bombing here, but I think it's best to actually view these 5 strategies each as little traps. It's just that they're traps that most people can't see. Seriously, every single one of these things is designed to pull you back in and trap you back into that narcissistic abuse cycle. And they only get progressively more and more complex as you go. And here's the most devious part. A narcissist will learn as they go. So maybe trap number 1, love bombing, trips you up and pulls you back into this vicious cycle. Well, if that's the case, the narcissist will literally learn from that and then use it again when they need to trap you once more. So what they're doing is they're figuring out what levers work on different people and adjusting accordingly. Look at this one, for example. With trap number 2, we have cold empathy. Now, I briefly touched on this in one of my earlier videos on narcissism, and it really resonated with a lot of people, like this comment here, or this comment here. All right, before I go into what cold empathy is, I think we need to set the stage a little bit. Let's say we have Bob the narcissist, and then we have, of course, you, the person using no contact. And we know what Bob wants. Bob wants you back as a source of supply. There's just one problem. His normal love bombing idealization tactics, well, they're not working on you. But this doesn't deter Bob. If anything, it makes him want to try harder. This is when he decides to employ cold empathy. So what the heck is this? Well, cold empathy refers to a narcissist's ability to recognize and understand the emotions of others without actually feeling empathy or compassion for them. It's a cognitive understanding of empathy, not an emotional one, which means that while a narcissist can identify what someone is feeling, they do not genuinely care about that person's emotional state in a sympathetic way. Rather, they're going to use it as a skill for manipulation or control. Let's go back to Bob. All right, so Bob decides he's going to use cold empathy. You dated for 6 months, and in that time, he's come up with a list of what makes you happy, sad, or fearful. So he decides to use this information to manipulate your emotions for his own benefit. For example, Bob knows that you are terrified of being alone and feeling isolated, and it's a vulnerability that became evident during your relationship. Now, aware of this fear, he begins to craft messages or scenarios that play on this anxiety. He starts sending texts, leaving voicemails, basically that suggests that he is feeling isolated too. He feels alone without you. He implies that you're both sharing the same pain, a commonality, and that the only way to heal is by being together. He also decides to add one last subtle touch. He hints at the idea that others can't understand you like he does. He then goes on to reinforce this notion that your special connection is the antidote to his shared fear of isolation. And this actually works incredibly well, like way too well. I'm a big fan of Chris Voss. He wrote the book Never Split the Difference. Now, this book is all about negotiation, and Chris Voss would know. He was basically the guy that police would call in after their hostage negotiators failed to get the job done. And what Chris Voss found worked incredibly well in these negotiations was this concept of tactical empathy.
About the transmission of information. Compassion is the reaction to that transmission. But unfortunately, that's not the way it's looked on in today's modern vernacular. So put tactical in front of it just to look at it as a skill, like a cell phone or a scalpel. Either one of those instruments can either do good or evil depending upon whose hands they're in.
Now, where Chris would use tactical empathy to understand the hostage takers' motivations and empathize with their worldview, a narcissist uses it in the same way, but they want to manipulate you into getting what they want. I hate to use this statistic, but I think a parallel can be drawn with women who are in abusive relationships. And technically, being caught in a narcissistic abuse cycle is an abusive relationship. Look at this quote from a domestic abuse shelter in Florida. On average, a woman will leave an abusive relationship 7 times before she leaves for good. Now, the statistic, while stark, I believe underscores the complex and challenging nature of how difficult it is to leave these types of relationships. But the parallel I'm drawing here, I believe, highlights a critical aspect in both situations. The powerful psychological bonds and manipulation tactics that make leaving so difficult in abusive situations are very much present in the narcissistic dynamic. Individuals caught in the narcissistic abuse cycle will likely find themselves repeatedly drawn back in due to tactics like love bombing.
I don't know right now if he's speaking specifically of hoovering, or he's just talking about it. I think he's just talking about it in general, but I remember, like, I don't mention people's names, so I'm not afraid to talk about it anyways. I don't know, it's just kind of something I don't particularly like to talk about, but I feel like maybe once in a while. I remember I had blocked this person probably a number of times, and of course it was blamed on me, but it was really their actions. And I forget what happened. I was going through a really tough time. It was what the Moderna did to me. I was very sick. I went down to 100 pounds then, and something else too, which I won't mention because I don't want to affect my, the people who watch me, but considering the state that I was in and the pain disorders that I suffer with, and I have to say also autism too, this person couldn't have cared if I died. Okay, that's where it was. Couldn't have cared if I died. They're more interested in trying to hurt me while I was going downhill. And this whole thing, I just felt like man, this person's cold. And I did manage to turn it around on them. And when I did, no, actually, right before then, when there was a period of time where, I guess you would say they were on top, right? Where I didn't know, like, what's going on. And, anyways, I remember it got to a point where she had blocked me. And I'm like, please unblock. And when they unblocked, we started to speak again. And this wasn't the same person. This person was so ugly inside that it was God inside of me telling me. I know it was my perception. I have good perception about people, okay? And that's the first reason it didn't last that long. But picture somebody reopening their Facebook, right, and start talking to each other after all this stuff. I felt an evil. I'm like, just like this, wow, like I don't think I can do this, man. And that was it. Like, I felt sick in my stomach. Anyways, I forget what I was going to get at. I think you know where I'm coming from if you've been affected by one.
Hoovering and the employment of cold empathy. And then there's the third big trap, guilt. Let's play a game. Throughout this video, I have basically presented two roles.
I'm going to talk about the
narcissist and the victim. Now, for many of us watching, if you've made it this far, you're probably putting yourself in the victim role. And you're likely putting someone you know in the narcissist role, someone who you think is a narcissist. Now, I think the general sentiment is that as long as you're able to identify a narcissist, then their traps won't work on you. But I'd like to challenge that assertion. Let's change the game up a little bit. Remember, we have two roles. We have the narcissist and the victim. You can keep yourself in the victim role for this example. However, I want you to put someone you deeply love, someone who has never exhibited any kind of narcissistic traits in the narcissist role. Now, for me, that would be one of my parents. Let's say that my mother says something or implies that her life is in peril. What do you think I would do? I would immediately come to her aid. For many people in the narcissistic abuse cycle, this is actually the equivalent that they feel. It's the equivalent of what it's like when the narcissist guilts them. This is why guilt is such an effective way of pulling you back into the fray. I've seen narcissists use every trick in the book: PTSD, isolation, poverty, self-harm, bullies, abuse, all as a means of guilting victims to gain control. But let's play devil's advocate. Let's say they run through the entire laundry list of excuses. They try PTSD, they try isolation, they threaten self-harm, they gaslight you. And despite it all, you stick to the no contact rule. You're ignoring them. Well, that's when, like a light switch, their attitude suddenly shifts from guilt to fury. And that is the fourth trap. Anger. Now, what does that look like? Well, I thought it would be fun to hop on over to Reddit. Now, I know that's not the paragon of research, but I said I thought it'd be fun. And I ended up stumbling across this thread where a commenter detailed the hilarious fits of rage from their ex who they believe to be a narcissist. And this commenter, or poster, or whatever you want to call them, details examples of a narcissist cracking the dash of their car with his face because I wouldn't drive him to work, tripping on an extension cord, face hit the ground, he dropped his bowl of chips, walked into a glass door, presumably on purpose, got mad at me for being good at his favorite game, locked himself in the bathroom and wouldn't come out, dropped a jar on his foot. It's like a child throwing a tantrum for attention. Now, obviously, all of these seem to be in-person tantrums. Anger during a no contact rule would not look like this. It would probably look something like them talking bad about you on social media, telling friends and family that you were the reason for the breakup. They'll stalk you, serve you with legal notices, brag about how their new person is so much better than you, even though they're lying. Now, why are they doing this? Well, in a very odd way, the premise of this entire video centers around a quote from Albert Einstein that you've probably heard to death. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. The narcissist wants their supply. They want you back. They want to control you. And the harder you resist via the no contact rule, the more invested they become into trying to get you. So they keep trying to spring all these different traps, all in an effort to pull you out of the silence so they have a chance to further manipulate. They've tried their usual love bombing. Oh, that didn't work. They tried cold empathy. Well, that didn't work either. They've tried guilting. Nope. Anger. Maybe anger.
This is their toolbox that they talk about. But I'm playing this because I haven't seen one like this before. This guy's very thorough about it, and I like the way he does it. What I wanted to say was, when it came to Hoover, when I was like finally done, by the way, the thing that pushed me over the edge to say, like, see you later, it was an email where they were using one of my psychological weaknesses against me. I know that's exactly what they were doing. And it was a very private one too. And so I said that was it. Block on whatever. And it's strange how it begins. It may not be right away. I forget exactly how it went, but it wasn't like sorry or anything like that. It was like this toolbox here. Before I even blocked them, I went something like, it was like 20 days without talking to them. But yet I kept the Facebook thing open, and suddenly I get a message after 20 days saying, I miss you. That was the first one. You miss me, but you don't talk to me, eh? Okay. You're breadcrumbing me, so, you're going to get the same thing. When it comes to shutting it off, it was like there was like one good email. One, they're never going to admit exactly what it was, what they did to you, and they're too shameful to come to you and say, like, I was trying to basically kill you. I was trying to put you down every way I could because I felt hurt like a little child. A baby. It went from... I'm not trying to hurt someone here, okay, guys? I just can't believe there's so many people in society like this right now. It went from one good email to one that was accusing me of something that I had nothing to do with, like an hour or so away from me. And then it'd be good, then it'd be bad, but those slowed down. Then the next one was going to be a different kind of tactic. I knew to expect this already. This one came up, anger. So it was like, first I was sad, but now I'm mad. Okay. Right? And when they realize that there's nothing they can do, well, we'll see. We'll see what this last box is.
Anger will work. Nope. So rather than continuing to be angry, they flip a switch, throw a Hail Mary, and unveil the most insane strategy to date, which is the fifth and final trap, the persona of transformation. The most insane strategy to date, which is the fifth and final trap, the persona of transformation. This one is insane, like legitimately crazy, and that's kind of the reason I saved it for last. Most of the time, for most people, the 4 other traps previous to this that they've sprung get you. They suck you back into their orbit. But in those rare cases where you have someone who has the fortitude to ignore all that, continue ignoring like they should, this is where the persona of transformation comes into play. Now, in order to properly explain this, I need you to accept an ideal. A true narcissist, a true one, doesn't really possess what you would call a personality. At least not in the traditional sense. Instead, they accumulate and imitate behaviors that they've observed throughout their life, which allows them to assemble a patchwork of traits that they then use to charm and connect with others. This trap is where they fall back onto that basic premise, that basic idea. They decide going to rebrand themselves. And really, the persona of transformation happens over 4 distinct phases. You have the public transformation phase, the targeted vulnerability phase, the indirect communication phase, and then the direct communication phase. Let's first look at the public transformation phase. All right, so basically the narcissist decides they're going to start a public campaign of self-improvement. And this could include anything from going to therapy sessions to engaging in community service. Now, the key here is that they make sure you hear about it through mutual friends or social media. They might even start a blog, vlog, or social media account dedicated to their journey towards becoming a better person. Then we have targeted vulnerability. They're going to ensure that the transformation that they're showcasing aligns closely with the changes you had hoped to see in them during the relationship. All those complaints, all those long nights where you were yelling at them for not being present and being selfish, they took that to note and they're going to use it against you. So for example, if you long for them to be more empathetic, they might volunteer at a shelter or start advocating for mental health awareness. They'll present themselves as newly compassionate and understanding. Now, all throughout this time, they are not they're giving you your space. Months have gone by, and all you are seeing.
I think I missed that. I think I got my mute by mistake. What I was saying was, if I missed that, was all this time. I'm out of it today, guys. I'm so tired right now. They'll go so far as to target whatever they can in you. It's got to such a stage that they're willing to try to dissect the things that they think you're going to like. So I find that amazing. Like their last playing card could be transformation. Like I'm doing well. This is what I've changed. I'm a new person. Only to go back in that cycle. This is how they suck you in. And then it's like 10 times worse. This is what they do. It's evil. You know, you're almost at the point of healing, or you've healed, but you know, some people get sucked into this. Never get sucked into this. Never go back to someone who's bad to you. Everyone has arguments, even some emotional abuse, like what might seem like something, but it wasn't on purpose. I don't mean those things. I mean purposeful, emotional, and physical abuse. Transformation. Like they'll start doing things that you're doing. They'll study things that you're studying. Crazy.
On your end are all these seemingly altruistic acts. And that's when the indirect communication starts. Instead of reaching out directly to you, they use these public displays and mutual connections to ensure that stories of their transformation find their way to you, knowing it will tug at your heartstrings and stir up confusion. Now, this tactic is incredibly effective because it plays on the hope and love that led you to engage with them initially, but it's a manipulation masterclass. They leverage public perception and your inherent desire to see the best in others to their advantage. And that's when they strike and we enter into the direct communication phase. Essentially, they reach out to you. It's light, nothing forceful. Months have gone by. You're kind of over them, so you finally give in. You finally decide to start talking to them again. Now, the crazy part about all this is it isn't just the transformation itself, but the depth of the calculation behind it. It's designed to exploit your specific emotional vulnerabilities and hopes. And it's a reminder that the narcissist will go to any lengths to get what they want. Now, one of the things.
So think about that. Think about the lengths that they went to do that. The mathematical calculation that they had to do in their head, all the thinking over all that time. And you don't think they don't belong to at least in a psychiatrist's office? It makes me wonder why they're left out in society. If that's what their primary goal is, to get supply and to hurt other people all day long. That's what they do all day long. They don't do anything else. Excuse me. Paul said they'd be like this.
Things that I'm not seeing a lot of people talk about. Let me put it this way. Narcissists, or using narcissism on YouTube, is like a big buzzword now. But one of the things I don't see people talking about a lot is the fact that these are very abusive relationships. I mean, it's literally right there in the cycle. Look at the name. It's literally called the narcissistic abuse cycle. But the lines get blurred when you're just madly in love with someone. It's one of the great paradoxes in life that what we often value is how we feel about someone, how our heart is taken by them. And the paradox is that often our heart leads us into the greatest depths of despair. In the end, I think it's all about recognizing and acknowledging that
like the things they do to you, they're absolutely insane. And people wonder why it is you go back to them, because you have that soul tie. You have that soul tie. And like it's like you're romancing in your mind. It's like you're idealizing them. You've become them. And you're like, well, I remember they used to be this way. But anyways, if you're truly chosen by God, if you are in person, I'm not talking about over the internet. I'm talking in person. These people can't trick you. I'm telling you, they cannot.
the abuse of these kind of dynamics is not just a step towards healing. It's a profound act of reclaiming your worth and identity. Can I get real with you? For me, for this video to mean anything, I want people who maybe don't have the courage to leave relationships that are abusive, that are like this, to wake up and recognize that this is happening to them and that they deserve better. So the point for me for this video is about helping you identify these traps that narcissists continually use and continually work. And it's not just narcissists. It's anyone who relies overly on narcissistic traits. Like I said, narcissist is like a big buzzword on YouTube right now, but what matters is understanding that there's a difference between a full-blown diagnosed narcissist and someone with a lot of narcissistic traits. But in my mind, if someone is going to resort to narcissistic traits a lot of the time, that person usually is not worth staying in a relationship with or taking back. So for this video to mean anything, it's all about you reclaiming your worth and your self-identity.
I think he made a statement that could be right and wrong. There's no statistics done because social media has only been around, let's say, for 10 years. Really, it's only been around for 10 years in a certain manner to the ability that we can do today. Listen, I've been using social media. It was like MSN. I remember in like 1999, 2000. There was like chat rooms and stuff like that. People were so bad to each other. I didn't take part in that kind of stuff, like treating people badly. I was never like that. So there's no way he can know for sure. But at the same time, he could be right that it's just there's a lot of people with high narcissistic traits. Listen, if you're on Instagram, Facebook, all those things, just look along your list. Just look at the people. How many times are they putting a picture of themselves a day? If they're doing that more than twice, there's probably an issue. Yeah, some people like to do pictures, always have all that type of stuff, but I don't think anything will ever be the same again because of social media, because of electronics, guys. Let's just face it. You'd be pretty blind to not know that. I believe that men are stopping dating women because of all these things that are happening. Just like I said, I believe NPD is equally men versus women. Those are the stats. but that may be just NPD. But anyways, men are starting not to date women because they're afraid of all these antics that they're playing, and it's actually men not dating women anymore. That's what's starting to happen. I wonder if it was designed that way, but I remember when I was, I don't know, maybe 14 or 15 years old. Remember, I had autism. I have autism. And then I developed CPTSD. I wasn't in the best place. I didn't really have the best boundaries. There's some bullies around, and I was bullied. In some ways, I was when I was young. And, I was never afraid to, like, if I really had to stick up for myself, I did. But when it came to, like, well, let's just say there was instances where they mess around with you. Let's just say like that. I don't mean physically. If it was physically, that was a different thing. Where I didn't have my boundaries up. Learn to put your boundaries up. You're going to have to learn how to do it. And if you haven't done it like if you're an adult and you don't have boundaries, you're going to have to learn those boundaries. Don't let anybody in that doesn't have your best interest at heart. And if you're looking for someone to date, to this is a Christian channel, born again, maybe it's your wife, looking for a wife. If that person isn't interested in you, isn't interested in God, then I'm talking about born again Christians. You're going to make the focus of your relationship God. That's what's going to help you stay married. I believe that. I'm not the best person at relationships in person because of all the different illnesses that I have. It's very tough. Anyways, I hope you got something out of this. I think this guy, and psychological reasons too, but a lot of my physical cause psychological, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I thought this guy did an excellent job, and I thought it was worthwhile commenting and just showing this. God bless all you guys. Get out if you can. Get out. Never look back. Never look back, or you'll turn into salt.